Hello and welcome back to the podcast. So we've got a very special guest, someone we've been working with for, a little under 3 months at this point.
Yeah.
So let me intro Abby here. So Abby's been our student that enrolled, I think, in the second week of January in our Career Services program.
Mm-hmm.
And you have been a stay-at-home parent for 13 years.
Yes.
And 2 weeks ago, you got 2 offers, one of which you accepted, and you were starting on Monday as a full-time data analyst.
Yes.
Awesome. So
I'm
I'm
really
sure,
excited.
I'm sure our audience would like to hear all about, kind of that journey and kind of, what were your major struggles? What tactics did you deploy? So I guess let's start off the episode with, can you walk us through this journey?
Yeah. So I've been a stay-at-home mom for a while. I'd done some part-time work during that time. Like I'd been a secretary, I'd been an event coordinator for my kids' school. I'd done some content writing for a website, and also did marketing and ad sales for that website. So I'd done some things. But every part-time job I had, I always kind of veered towards the analytical side of things, like working in Excel, doing bookkeeping, using the Google Analytics for the ad sales, things like that. And it was something I was interested in. I just didn't know if I could do it. So last year, we had made a move. We had moved states, and I had a little extra time. And so I started the Google Analytics course. And it was a good course.
What you're saying and the tone are discongruent. What I've heard is that the Google Analytics course it's like an appetizer.
Exactly. And I'd found creators on TikTok like Annie Nelson and Charlotte Chaz who were kind of showing their journey. And that really kind of helped me, watching them go on their pursuit of data analytics. And the Google course is kind of like an appetizer. Like it kind of showed me the process, but it didn't go in depth in anything. So after that, I started doing more in-depth courses. And I had like my soft skills that I'd learned. You learn soft skills as a stay-at-home mom. It's like negotiating with terrorists. Right. So you learn how to explain things to people, multitasking. And then those part-time jobs really worked on those soft skills as well. And then I'd gotten all my technical skills. I used DataCamp. I used Coursera. But I kind of couldn't put all those pieces together. I didn't know how to use LinkedIn. I only had 50 connections on LinkedIn.
Well, I just checked your LinkedIn. You're at 4,400 at this point?
Yeah. It's amazing. That's been in the couple of months that we worked together.
Right.
And that's been a lot of fun. That's been fun because I've had people say, "Oh, your posts have really helped," and I've learned stuff. And that is amazing to me because I'm just sharing what I'm doing and going through, and it's helpful.
So this is interesting because you're the first cohort that we brought Ian Clausewitz on to do the social media brand coaching. And what we learned from that is that getting that positive reinforcement from the world in LinkedIn has been, I think that from a psychological, emotional level, reinforces this new identity. Because now you have people asking you career advice, right?
Yeah, I do. It's weird, but fun. That I kind of need that immediate reinforcement.
Right.
So, a course takes you a long time to get through and get a certification. It takes a while to get a job, to get that validation that you are an analyst. But every day you get on LinkedIn and you post and you have this community around you asking you questions. It really makes a difference.
Yeah. And I think feedback on this last cohort, I think we got overfixated on LinkedIn. I feel like people were optimizing on, they were more concerned about, okay, my last post didn't have as much engagements as my last three
Right.
versus building the skills. So I think we're still trying to find a balance to where you guys had a weekly touch base with Ian. I think we may scale that back to just one and then have him in the group chat, critiquing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did kind of get a little obsessed with the numbers, but because it's fun, it's interesting to see people from other countries and what they're doing and their journeys. So the LinkedIn aspect was super helpful because the recruiter that got me my interview for both offers found me through LinkedIn. And
Amazing.
if I hadn't learned how to optimize my LinkedIn and network, I mean, I wouldn't have a job right now. So, as much as social media can be a bad thing, it really can be a great tool as well.
Well, it's funny because I had the opposite effect, if I'm being honest, to where I took Ian's advice and Ian actually coached me through it. But every time I would post, I would have 5 or 6 people saying, you're wrong about this, this, and this. And I don't know if it's because like I'm in a position of authority and it's like
Yeah.
people think they can take me out because it negatively affected my mental health. So
Oh.
I've like kind of pulled back from it. But it seems like it's a great, identity reinforcer for our students because it seems like people are overwhelmingly supportive of new people trying to break into the space.
Yeah.
Versus it's a lot harsher when it's like you're a professor and they're like, well, actually, you
Right.
said this, and I was getting that at scale. So it's like with LinkedIn, you got to be cognizant of their goal is to get as much content and eyes so that they can sell ads. And what I think you've done is you've kind of played the system to your own benefit. It's almost like credit cards, like
Yeah.
like if you take out $500 credit card debt and pay it down at the end of the month, you get that free flight. But if you don't pay it back, then they're charging you 26% interest. And then they're, kind of playing you to where that's one thing that I just want to kind of check in with about, the people who are listening who are like, oh, I'm just going to get on LinkedIn and it's going to work out. It's like, you got to be a little bit methodical about how you approach it.
Right. Definitely. And there have been some comments, maybe kind of disagreeing with things that I've posted. I usually go, oh, that's a great point, and move on. But it hasn't been a lot, so it hasn't really affected me. So hopefully that doesn't happen, or I don't know what I would do.
Okay. So to recap, kind of, you started kind of heading in this way a year before you kind of came through our cohort.
Right.
So, what do you think is the difference of what you've been doing this year versus what you weren't doing, before you came through the cohort?
So I think what changed a lot with coming through the cohort was my mindset, right? The first time we met, you were like, so tell me about yourself. And I was like, well, I'm a mom, like that's who I was. And that's who I'd been for so long. But after the cohort, I go into my interviews and they're like, tell me about yourself. And I'm like, oh, I'm a data analyst,
Right.
And even there was a event, my daughter was interested in extracurricular and I had to go, and they were asking the parents like, well, what do you do? And I got to go, oh, I'm a data analyst, like
and look at you were just glowing. You love
Yeah.
that it's like you've got this like new identity that
Right.
is interesting and you care about, and it's also, I mean, it's economically viable. Like you're making money doing that.
Absolutely. And that's important with your kids.
Right.
But I love to learn. And the thing about this field is there's always something to learn. Like,
Right.
even though I've gotten a job, I've still got plenty of things that I can keep studying and learning. And I think that's what is exciting, the most exciting.
Yeah. Well, that's something I tell my students is that everyone's got it backwards. They think they go to school to learn. It's like, no, you go to school to get ready to start learning, especially in a career like analytics. It's like, no, we're just getting you ready to get to the starting line, because when you get into a role, it's like, you've got to hit deadlines. You've got to understand these complex topics. You've got to, learn this tool so you can do your job. And it's not like you can just sit in the back of the classroom and kind of doze off. It's like, no, this is, sink or swim to some extent.
Right. And that's what's so exciting about
That's
it.
so cool.
But I think back to what changed was my mindset, right? So now when I'm interviewed, I'm more confident in what I've learned and who I am. And even taking my resume and the work that you and Katie did with me for my resume, I mean, really highlighted more of the things that I accomplished in the roles that I'd had, and not just like some word vomit of, buzzwords.
Yeah. Well, I think so for those of you who are listening, so Katie Underwood has recently joined the team as well, and she's currently working as an analytics manager in the Raleigh-Durham area. So she's got a master's degree in analytics, is I think 13 years into her career at this point, has built out an entire team. What's interesting about her is that she's come from the huge companies, so like Lincoln Financial, and is on the operations side, to where I work with mostly startups or smaller companies on the sales and marketing side. So she's kind of like my foil. But also too, I think probably talking to her gives you some insight into, I don't know what it's like to be a woman in the workforce. Mm-hmm. So like, I feel like maybe you could relate to her and get some advice that like, I can't give you because I don't have that perspective.
Right. And I did. I talked with Katie and asked her about being a mom in the workforce. And because I was making it into like this huge thing that it didn't have to be. Sorry, my hair.
Right.
I was making it into this huge thing that it had to be. And she's like, I think that's just you. Like,
right.
That's a you problem. So I had a real Taylor Swift moment going on.
Well, I mean, she's so impressed. I'm so impressed by her. I mean, she's supporting a whole family of 5. Like her husband is a stay-at-home dad. That's so amazing. Like she is, and I think she's a great role model, especially for our female students. Cause I can't be that person. I mean, I guess I can kind of like, I've got some things I can teach, but it's just kind of a different climate. Also, one of the things that I've noticed huge about you from like, and this is something that I got to see you slowly come out of, is that when we would do mock interviews, like at the beginning, or even in that first call we had, you would like overshare things about yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, Abby, don't lead with, hey, I feel uncomfortable, or hey, I don't, I haven't done this full time or whatever.
Right.
I'm like, no, own what you're doing. So instead of saying, I haven't worked full time as an analyst, you're like, well, I've studied this. I know SQL, I know Python. I've worked on these case studies. And just how you're interviewing, I think has probably come a huge way.
Right. Absolutely. And I couldn't have done that without the career services course, because you're right. I did come into it very kind of timid, like, well, I've worked in Excel, but it wasn't a lot. I didn't do a lot. And well, I've managed projects, but it was just projects for kids. It wasn't much. So, but now when I go into an interview, it's like, yes, I've worked in Excel. I've automated some processes. I organize community service projects. Much more confident. And that's important, especially with finding a job, because you're not going to go into a job interview and be timid and unsure about yourself and then want to hire you. So,
you got to sell yourself.
Part. Yeah, exactly.
Right. All right. So we got a question from Noel coming in here. So question for both regarding LinkedIn. Is it poor form to call yourself a data analyst on LinkedIn before you get a job as a data analyst? He said that he noticed that you did this, Abigail. What was the reason for this?
Well, like I said, I needed to change my mindset of how I was thinking of myself. I have used the tools. I can use Excel, SQL, Python, Tableau, Power BI. I am an analyst, whether I've been paid for those services yet or not. And I was doing some freelance work, and it wasn't necessarily paid freelance work. It was just so I could get my hands on some real world data. But I think that's part of your mindset. Like,
absolutely agree with that.
Don't go on LinkedIn and say, I'm an aspiring analyst. No, if you use these tools, you're an analyst. So put that on there.
Right.
That was my reasoning and why.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that you don't have to wait for the world to say, we deem you. Like you can have some internal control of Hey, I have used an the question or the way to frame this up, I think, is, have you used a tool to drive something that has had economic impact? If the answer is yes, which, I mean, even like kids these days are using data on like TikTok to see
Right.
which posts,
Yeah.
you're functionally speaking a data analyst in that, because you're getting more engagement, which then
Right.
could lead to, I don't know, monetization on TikTok. I have no idea about how all of that works, because
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel like a boomer. I'm starting to feel older and older. So where
No.
we've started dipping our toe a little bit into TikTok, but
I love TikTok.
TikTok is
It's awesome.
it is awesome, but it is also like crack. Like, it is just
That's
very,
true.
very, it just hijacks my attention so
Oh, yeah.
effectively well.
Mm.
But yeah, so Noel, to kind of reiterate that comment, yeah, your LinkedIn page is your professional landing page. So when you apply for a job, or you have a recruiter that reaches out to you, they're going to go, and Abby, this is a testament to you and the personal brand that you've built. That recruiter saw your profile and said, hey, I can place this person in analyst. Because you got to think about what the game that recruiters are playing. They have a role to fill, and they're not going to waste their time on someone that they don't think would actually pass through the interview. So I would not only put data analysts on there, but also put the tools that you're studying, build a portfolio, and then you can even start taking on like, because Abby, what you put was data analyst freelance. And I think you said like the last 9 months you've been doing that. Yeah, I mean, that is not ethically bad to do that, especially if you're actually doing the work.
Right.
Now, if you put some fake company and then you like, said, here, call this number, it's the CEO and it's your friend, like that's you're getting into like, okay, that is actively deceptive.
Right.
But like, if you were able, because also too, I'm sure they asked you about that. Like if you're in the interview and they see, they went to your LinkedIn page and saw freelance, like you would have to talk about some of those projects.
Exactly. And I
then
did.
Yeah, and you'd be found out if it was like completely nonsense.
Right.
Or made up. Okay, so here's just a series of questions that I was curious about. So did you get any interviews from jobs that you applied for, or was it all coming from the recruiters that you connected with?
It was mostly from the recruiters. I did not have a lot of luck with just applying for myself through LinkedIn.
Interesting.
I did get a couple of emails back from a couple of Indeed applications I did.
Okay.
But for the most part, it was the recruiters that found
So
that.
how many applications do you think you sent out?
Over 1,000.
Over 1,000. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a minute where Amanda found Civium, which is like it automates the process.
Yes.
But those were just scam jobs. And also too, you got to be careful with Civium, because I think it violates the code of conduct or agreement use policy for LinkedIn.
Well, I did try it, and that's how I got to that number 1,000 really quickly. But it didn't have great control over what a job they applied for. Like, I was always only looking for remote work, but Civium didn't care. They applied to everything, and even I was looking for associate or junior analysts, entry level, and it was applying to like senior level jobs. And so I was getting emails like, we've looked at your qualifications, you don't meet the qualifications. And I'm like, oh gosh. Even people were like, please read the description before you apply. Like, dang it, Civium.
Right. So
I turned that off rather quickly.
Yeah, well, because the worst case scenario is that, especially since you built this following, is that they find that there's this API or something that's hooked up to it, and then they just delete your account, and then all of that, because you've got an asset now with your LinkedIn profile. So like now you can, if you want to, you can start to continue to kind of blog or journal about your experience, and then maybe a year or two from now, you might have another recruiter reach out to you for your promotion.
Yeah, that would be cool.
You've got like a path forward there.
Yeah. And I do plan on continuing to post and grow it because, I do have that background in content creation, and I do enjoy writing and putting things on there. So I think it's a good outlet. I'll probably definitely keep it
Yeah,
going.
well, it's a confidence booster is the thing that all the students, not every one of our students in the cohort like really, decided to go full bore into LinkedIn. But the ones that did, it's like Drew and Diane have really big
Yeah,
followings right now.
they do.
I think Drew just broke 10,000
He
LinkedIn
did.
followers.
It's awesome. Yeah.
So it's really interesting kind of how all of this works. Also too, okay, can you walk us through, you don't have to talk about the company that you're going to be working with, but what was the interview process like for most of these interviews that you went on?
Well, I had a really cool interview with a startup. I just didn't have enough experience to continue at that one. They really just looked at my LinkedIn and were like, yeah, we know you've got the technical skills. We just want to see if you're a good fit for the culture. And I really enjoyed talking with them. The interviews with the job that I just accepted and the offer that I accepted were just one-step interviews. So there was no technical test. It was literally just like a video or phone interview, and by the afternoon I had offers. So it was a really quick process, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
Because I was hearing horror stories of like 6-part interviews.
Yeah, Diane, I think, had 2 6-part interviews.
Yeah.
and then it didn't lead to an offer, which is, that feels like
frustrating.
disrespectful of the candidates at
It
that
really
point.
does.
Like, we're gonna spend this much time and energy vetting you, and I think that's pretty much a red flag.
Yeah.
Like, if they're gonna have this many, to where I guess probably what that signals is that they don't really know what they want. Oh, look who it is. Drew's popping up in the chat. So he did break 10,000, and next is 20,000.
Awesome.
He's on his way. Okay, so you got 2 offers, what, last week?
The week before.
The week before? What was the other interview process like? Was that a 3-step, or was that a one-step process as well?
One-step process.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And then, well, what were the titles for this? Because one thing that I'm starting to like really explore, it's interesting how this scales, in that because I have my students who are going out and interviewing, they, it's like in the cohort, I don't know, there's probably been 20, 30 interviews over the last 2 months. So I get to kind of observe what my students are going through. And it seems like the easiest jump into the space is probably a data analyst title. To where Amanda was interested in data engineering. And I think that is more like a data science role, where you typically work for a year or 2 as a data analyst, get that experience under your belt, get experience working with tools and real data, and then pivot into one of those roles.
Yeah. And I find those roles interesting too, but I'm really happy. I like the visualization and that stuff too. So I don't know. We'll see. But the title that I have for the job I accepted is Reporting Analyst. I'll be in the HR department. It's like a human capital management type deal.
Okay. And go ahead.
And another job I was going to interview for, and it was, they wanted me to have SQL and Excel, but the title for that was just report writer. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So what were the major challenges that you ran into throughout this process?
Personally, the hurry up and wait part.
Yeah.
I'm not good at that. Let's see. Just, it really all came down to mindset for me.
Really?
After being at home for 13 years, just changing how I thought of myself and presenting myself to people. Like, that was the biggest challenge. Because technical skills, you can learn those, you can practice those.
Right.
But just your mindset of who you are and how you present yourself was the biggest challenge for me.
Did you do any coaching calls with Katie on that specific?
I did like a mock interview, go over my resume type, couple of calls with her, and she did look at my portfolio. But yeah, talking with her really helped, since she is, coming from that space of being a mom.
Do you remember any of the advice that she gave you during that call?
Yeah. I was being really timid about what I would call myself. And she's like, if you have touched any of these tools, you are an analyst. You are.
Yeah.
So that's all I needed to hear. I'm going to take that and run with it. That's who I am. So
Yeah, that's true. And I guess the combination of having people that are established and you respect in the space telling you that, and then going out, posting on LinkedIn and getting that reinforcement, it really helped kind of transition that identity that you've had of, who am I and what do I do?
Right.
To where now do you know what specific tool you're going to be using starting next week?
Tableau.
Okay.
Which I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
I took the Google cert and I thought I knew Tableau, but then I hopped on Maven's course and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been doing everything the hard way for no good reason.
Yeah. I saw your post about that on LinkedIn like a day or two ago.
Very true. Like I was amazed because I kind of liked Power BI and how when you create the charts and things, it goes straight onto the dashboard, right? You don't because in Tableau you create sheets and then you put them on the dashboard, and I was having a lot of trouble with that. But after taking this course on Maven, I was like, oh, well, I was making it too hard. That's why it seemed that way.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I got my start in the analytics space, is doing Tableau work. And then I identified kind of for a year, like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years as like a Tableau specialist.
Oh.
But then I've kind of branched out into just more general analytics and more so kind of on the career services and the teaching front. But yeah, that is really interesting about. So they didn't ask you any Tableau questions in the interview. Did they see your portfolio?
Yes, they had looked at my portfolio.
Okay.
And there were a couple of questions. Because they use Tableau in their department, but the company has access to Power BI because it's like a Microsoft company. They use mostly Microsoft products. So they were thinking about making that switch. And so they asked, which I preferred and how much I'd used both and that kind of thing. But nothing super technical.
Yeah, what I've heard a lot of companies are doing right now is they'll have Power BI for reporting, and then they'll do exploratory, more advanced analysis in Tableau.
Yeah, that could be the direction it'll be in. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that does sound really, really fun. So I'm curious, what do you have, like 1 or 2 pieces of advice? Like, what would be your biggest advice to somebody who is going and trying to make this transition?
There are great resources on YouTube. You do not have to spend a ton of money to take courses and collect certifications to pursue this. And 2, just surround yourself with people who are in the analytics space. So even if it's just like joining a group on LinkedIn or before I knew how to use LinkedIn, I was on Reddit a lot in their data analysis subreddit. They're super helpful people.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Are you like talking about like the R analytics or R data analytics subreddit?
I am, yeah. And in fact, a few times I would put in questions for stuff. I would search in the group and your course would pop up.
Oh, interesting. Very cool.
It was funny because this is kind of a full circle deal. When I first decided to start pursuing this, I went to my podcast app and I typed in how to get a job in analytics. And your podcast popped up and I listened to it while I made dinner for like a long time. And then, as I was taking courses and things like that. And then when I have questions, I'd go into Reddit and I would search and your courses would pop up. And so finally, I had gotten a couple of interviews in like January or December, November, maybe. And I was like, if I don't get an offer for this job, I'm just going to sign up for the course. It was like that afternoon that I got the no thank you. I messaged you on LinkedIn about your course. So yeah, your podcast has been a big part of my.
Well, also
journey.
too, I just want to say thank you. Like it's come full circle now. And I mean, that's got to be a little bit trippy that
Yeah, it is really weird.
Because I started having that where I was watching a Netflix documentary and one of my podcast guests showed up on it. It was
wow.
The Tinder Swindler, I think, or something.
That's
No,
nice.
it was the one about the GameStop. Like one of the podcast guests actually was he pivoted from analytics into making content about like, GameStop stocks and that kind of stuff. And then he showed up and I was like, it's weird that like you're starting to break down and you can actually
Yeah.
interact. It's almost like going on like CNN or like Fox
Yeah.
News or some like big thing to where, yes, it's all becoming kind of distributed. But yeah, it is interesting that it doesn't seem like what's holding most people back is skills and technical skills.
Mm-hmm.
It is, how are you interviewing? How are you communicating?
Mm-hmm.
To where I'm curious, like, how did those interviews go before you went through the program?
They were probably a lot like that first call that we had.
Well, it's so funny because it's like so obvious once you like,
Mm-hmm.
once you have a coaching call and I'm like, hey, listen, I asked you to tell me about yourself. And then I asked you tell me about yourself, not tell me the bad things about yourself.
Right. Exactly.
And you're like, well, I don't know this, and I don't know
Yeah.
that.
I don't know that.
To where I think it comes from a good place though. With you, I think you're very honest and you didn't want to, deceive anybody, but
Right.
You were over leaning into that to where,
Right.
you can take up a little bit more space and, people aren't going to be like, oh, you're a fraud. They're not. They're not going to like figure you out and then kick you out of the interview.
Yeah, but that was my fear.
But you had already connected to recruiters before the program, right? Or was the recruiter that landed the job, was this from the recruiter you met in January or February?
Yes. January, I think it was January. It had to be early in the year, or at least December at the earliest.
And how does that work? Because thank you so much. You've already sent a lead about a Starbucks contract to the group that you can't take because you've already taken an offer, which I love is I think that is going to happen more and more for our program, to our students who are alumni who are already in jobs are going to get other opportunities come their way. And then they can just give it back to the group, which is, thank you so much. That is exceedingly kind. But how did you go about building that relationship with that recruiter? Because you got 2 offers from one recruiter, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, this particular recruiter that I think it was in December, right before I started the course, she was super nice. And I've heard some horror stories about recruiters, but we connected. She got me I didn't get any interviews to begin with. But she just kept finding me roles. For months, we were talking back and forth.
Interesting.
And she was putting my name in for multiple roles a week. The most feedback we would get from account managers was, she doesn't have enough experience. She doesn't have enough experience. Until finally, I think it's when I came to you and Katie and asked, like, how do I really showcase my Excel skills on my resume? Because one job in particular really wanted someone with a lot of Excel knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And once I did that, I ended up getting the 2 interviews. And then they were one-step interviews, and I got 2 offers in one day. So, but I talked with this recruiter for months. She was just super helpful and really willing to find a job, willing to interview me.
So did she interview you though? Or was this just like back and forth via text?
She would call every now and then, and especially the first call, she called and asked me a lot of questions about my experience and the technical skills that I had. Mm-hmm. And then from there on, and I sent her my resume and I sent her a link to my portfolio. And from there on, we would just text or email, and it would be multiple roles a week she would put my name in for.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
because one thing about recruiters is that those are long-term relationships that you can
Mhm.
build to
Yeah.
where you landed the job, so she gets. I believe the way that it works is this has to be a third party recruiter, so
Mm.
it's not like you're. So there are different types of recruiters. There's like a recruiter that works for Wells Fargo. That's all they do is just place jobs for that. To where those I think are less specialized. To where
Yeah.
is all she did was just place analytics roles.
I lost you. Are you there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, did I cut out?
Yeah. Okay. You're back now.
Oh, okay. Where? Okay, where did I cut out at?
You're talking about a recruiter, like if there's just one recruiter for Wells Fargo and
Right.
um,
Okay, so the recruiters from a big company like that, I
mhm,
believe the way that it works is that they are going to be generalists, to where
mhm.
they're tied to the company. So if they need an HR person, that person can place them. If they need a technical person, analyst or data scientist, versus now was this recruiter is all she did was just placed analytics roles?
I'm not exactly sure. We never really discussed that, but
Okay,
she did find so many roles. So I imagine she had a lot of stuff to choose from.
right. Which I mean, that is a huge opportunity right there.
Mhm.
Like once you get that foot in the door with her, so now you're a success case. So either she made a big commission on you, or you helped her look good for her company.
Yeah,
Um, so
I
that's like,
hope.
yeah, that's huge right there. Okay, so circling back to LinkedIn,
Mhm.
what advice do you have for people who, let's say, the audience member doesn't even have a profile picture and doesn't
Oh,
have anything listed out? What if you could go back and so you're at 4,400 followers right now?
mhm.
If you could go back and start over again, building that following, are there any other things that you would do different, or do you just want to walk through like how you got what did that first post that Ian helped you make, was that just did that one blow up, or did it like take a few of those?
It did. I went from like 200 impressions to like 13,000 with uh, Ian's help. Like it was amazing. Just getting the formatting right. Definitely have a photo. Absolutely.
Right.
People want to see your face.
Yeah.
um, to connect like a face to the name there on the screen. Also, I was really afraid to post for the first time. So,
I get that. So many people are, they just don't want to put themselves out
mhm,
there. um that's interesting. Are you introverted?
I am.
That's probably why. So I'm much
Yeah.
less hesitant to put myself out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it just ran into where like I'm just getting nitpicked almost every single post that I make.
Yeah.
That's like giving advice, to where that's starting to wear on me a little bit. But yeah, it doesn't take it much like cognitive energy or emotional energy for me to just go make a post out in public.
Right. And the thing is like I like to write, so writing posts up isn't a big deal. It just took that first step of putting myself out there.
Right.
Um, and something that was helpful was like, so I'm a data analyst, so all of my posts should be filtered through that. Like, I don't need to go on there and tell people, my kid won a soccer game last night. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but it's not really going to be helpful. With LinkedIn, you want to be helpful. You want to give consumable, usable advice
Right.
or resources. It's not the type of social media for you to just put anything on. You want it to be useful.
Right. It's not Facebook.
Right, exactly. Thank goodness.
So, well, because what's interesting is because I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of like LinkedIn as a professional marketing tool for our students.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially what you're describing when you say just give like a little nugget of free, like
Mm-hmm.
for example, the posts that perform really well is, hey, here are 3 free resources. And then you have to click see more and then 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
Those perform really, really well because people
they
just
do.
like free stuff, and then they'll like and engage on it. But that's essentially an awareness campaign, to where what you're doing is you're getting a ton of impressions. People will start following you because they just want that little dopamine hit of like, here's something free, here's like a little bit of advice, or here's like a resource I can use. It's like not really much of a financial investment.
Right.
But then I think you should layer in, like Drew actually did this, where I think a lot of his posts are that, where it's like just high level, here's something that's like a little free gimme. But he recently made a post about, here are the 5 steps I took to clean up this data source for this portfolio piece. And it didn't get very much engagement. It's interesting. It's that like the things that are like really value additive a lot of times aren't the things that get the most impressions.
True, but I do think one of those posts that he put on there like that, the really in-depth ones, he had a recruiter reach out.
That's what you just stole my punchline to that story.
I'm sorry.
But no, I think that my understanding of like what makes building this kind of professional brand on LinkedIn effective is that it's almost like a marketing mix of maybe having a 3-to-1 ratio of, these like huge posts that go viral, and then the more boring posts that get it's like a quantity thing with the awareness, and it's quality with the much lower ones. Because he posted that post, and then the next day a manager saw what he had listed out and was like, I need that exact skill set on his team, and it led to an interview.
And that's awesome.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just think if you never took the time to post on LinkedIn, like he would have missed that completely. So.
Right. So maybe start with some of those awareness posts to kind of hack that dopamine hit that you get out of it, of like, oh, this feels really good. And people are, are you getting a lot of messages, by the way?
Yes. I am, but they're, because I listed myself as a freelance analyst, which is true. I'm having a lot of people asking for jobs, and I can't give people jobs.
Oh, like they want you to hire them?
Yeah, or help them find freelance jobs. And that's not really my skill set. So I'm not very helpful in that way, but I do get messages asking, what path did you take? What courses do you recommend? Those, and I try to answer those and give them some resources. I kind of list some free ones on YouTube and then some paid ones. And then I also recommend career services with Silvertone or the apprenticeship. But I try to answer those, but I can't help with getting anyone a job.
Okay, so we just got a question from Joanna about a recruiter. So Joanna Sanchez is saying, hi, thank you for this. Do you have any tips on how to work with a recruiter? What is the way to contact them? So you actually got contacted by them, right?
Right, exactly. They saw my LinkedIn and reached out. And, there was a period of time towards, we connected in December where, the job market kind of slowed down and I didn't hear from her for a while, but I would still text or email and be like, hey, have you heard anything, any opportunities this week? Don't be afraid to, if they've kind of they ghosted you for a while. Don't be afraid to kind of reach out and check in with them, to let them know that you're still interested, because you never know, maybe she was on vacation, maybe there were just no jobs, but definitely try to stay in touch so they know you're still interested.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so I guess in terms of like managing that relationship, you wouldn't like double text, for example. Like if they didn't get back to you, you wouldn't be like, I need this job.
No. Right. You want to be professional.
Right. Because
even though my gut instinct is to double text, like,
right. Well, okay. So let's talk about that a little bit, about like the anxiety around, what did you call it? Hurry up and wait?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, what was the struggle there? Like, did you just sent out, well, I guess, so the applications were a big miss for you. Mm-hmm. What was really the key to your success was the recruiter. So you would go on these interviews and then how long, like on average, how long did it take for them? Like once you got an interview, to hear back either a yes or a no.
Wait, will you ask your last question again? You broke up again.
Oh no. So okay, you were talking about it's kind of like a hurry up and wait
Her voice,
situation.
yeah.
So how long before an interview would you hear back yes or no in most cases? Was it like a few weeks? Sometimes never?
Yeah. Sometimes never. There was one opportunity I was really excited about. They contacted me through email and asked me some questions. I emailed them back. Never heard from them again. And for like 2 weeks, I was like, oh my gosh, I wish they would just let me know if they were interested, if they want me to do anything else. But I never heard from them. And then sometimes I would interview and it would take like a week, right, to even hear back anything, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really bad at that process.
No, I think it's when nobody's patient. Like, I shouldn't say nobody, but it's very hard to be patient. You know, especially because you're putting yourself out there and you're being a little bit vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you're being judged for, are you going to get this role or not?
Exactly. But I think that's where LinkedIn helps because you might be getting a lot of no thank yous, a lot of no's, but if you're posting and people are finding value in what you're saying, that kind of helps you keep going so that you don't get too upset over the no's and the no thank yous.
Yeah, because I mean, it's almost like doing sales calls, you know, because so I'm not applying for jobs, but I am selling the program. Mm-hmm. So like if I go, you know, get into a rut where it's like I get, you know, a few no's in a row or just ghosted. I mean, it's hard to keep up that morale. I think, I think LinkedIn is definitely a great way to kind of get some support there. Also, too, like if you've got some of that like anxiety, like that beehive of anxiety, just pour that into what skill do I not have? And just follow it right into that. Because I mean, that's what I do when I start getting like anxious about, you know, where is this company going? I just pour myself into work and it's almost like a self-soothing thing where I, you know, I'm not going out and just pestering these people. Like, are you in? Are you in? Are you in?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like work on a project, take a course on a tool you don't think, you know, you want to know better. That's a good way to pass the time. And that's a lot of what I did. Thankfully, my husband is in business and he's really good at going, you leave him alone. You don't need to email them again. Just leave him alone.
Okay. So speaking of tools, what's your level of SQL knowledge?
I'm going to say intermediate.
Okay. Are you going to be using SQL at this reporting analyst job?
They asked about it in the interview and they asked the same question. What's your level? How well do you know it?
Actually, let's role play that.
Okay.
I'm just curious, like how you answered this. So, Abby, what's your level of SQL knowledge?
I would say that my level is intermediate. I know all the aggregate functions. I can do window functions. I really like CTEs. I'm also, oh gosh, too many ums. Always. Let's see.
Well, I'm putting you on the spot. And this is different. Actually, let me ask you this. Is being on the podcast more or less anxiety inducing than an interview?
I feel like it's less.
Okay.
Just because I've done mock interviews with you before. So I kind of had an idea of how you were going to ask questions or that kind of thing.
Well, I really made you sweat in the mock interview.
Yeah.
But the thing is, aren't you glad you went through that discomfort though?
Absolutely. It really helped. It did.
Well, because I just like take you and I make you sit in that anxiety and I'm like, we gotta work on this specific, you know, especially like I think the open-ended questions are really where people struggle the most. To where like, if I were to ask you technical questions about SQL, I'm sure you could just rattle off answers. This is another question that Katie addressed on, I think it's the last episode with Hunter. Like how do you go about handling questions that you don't know the answer to?
Well, Katie's advice was excellent. Going, I don't know that answer right now, but I will find out and get back to you.
Yeah.
And then make sure you email them before the end of the day. But thankfully they didn't ask anything I didn't know. But they did. Oh, this did happen. Let me tell you. So we're in the interview and the guy who's going to be my boss is asking me questions. And he's like, so when you're not working, what do you do? And like, to me, like, because when he introduced himself, he said that he liked to play darts. So I thought maybe he's asking like what I do for fun. And I was like, I like to read, and we go to a lot of state parks and like hike and stuff with the kids. And I was just going on and on about how much, I enjoy being outside with my kids. He was like, no, I meant like at work. If you're not working on a project, what do you do?
Okay, in your defense, that was an awkward way of wording that.
Yeah, but like I died laughing. I was like, you let me ramble on about walks and parks.
that is hilarious.
So
yeah,
but I got the job, so maybe.
Yeah. Well, I think that people get so psyched out about how much do I know right now versus they're going like, I think the biggest factor is cultural fit. Like, do they like this person? Because they're going to be working with them day in and day out. And also to ethics. Like, are you going to do what you say you're going to do? Are you going to be honest? Now, I guess as you get into more senior roles, I think the technical acumen aspect will be more important. But just breaking into the space, it's like the interview needs to be a lot more, I think, personable than a lot of people anticipate. They just think I can just list off, all these things, all these certificates or courses I've taken. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, a lot of these like 1-hour courses, I feel like they have almost no value in terms of helping you sell yourself in an interview.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Definitely.
Right. It's more about, because this is interesting. Okay, I know that you've got a portfolio. I cannot remember the projects that you worked on. Where did you get those projects from?
One is a personal project. It was my personal LinkedIn data, and I just did some Excel charts. Nothing too fancy. Cleaned it up a little. Did some charts. Tableau projects. I think they're ones that. One was a competition for data in motion. And I think I ended up not even putting it in the competition, but I got the data set from there, worked on it in Tableau. I can't remember where I got my Power BI project, but anyway,
was it the ERP data from my classes?
It could be, yeah.
Okay.
And then I did some guided projects with Alex Freeberg on Alex the Analyst.
Okay. Interesting. Because I think did they actually ask you in the interview to pull up your portfolio, or did they take a look at it?
No, they didn't even. We didn't even have our cameras on.
Interesting.
Yeah,
wow.
I had gotten ready, looked professional, had my camera on, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't really like cameras on. You don't have to have it on. We're not going to have ours on." And so it was literally like a phone call.
Interesting. And it was just that. So the 2 offers that you got 2 weeks ago, it wasn't even a 3-step process. It was just one. Was it a longer one? Was it an hour or 3 hours? Like how?
No, with the company that I accepted, it was maybe about 45 minutes. And about 10 minutes of that was me asking them questions. And then the other one that I had an offer from was literally 15 minutes on the phone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I wonder if there's some social proof because you were referred from a recruiter.
Maybe
Does that
so.
make any sense? Like that
yeah.
recruiter wouldn't work with you if they didn't feel like you would be a good analyst for an entry level role.
Well, because their process was the recruiter puts my name in, and then they have an account manager for the business that they're working with. And that account manager has to approve me first before I can move on to interviewing with the company. So I guess if I've made it through the account manager, they kind of.
Also, so Calandra is asking, do you feel comfortable sharing this or not?
Wait.
Do you see in the chat here? It says,
Okay.
what company did you land the role at?
CareCentrix. They're like a mid-sized home health company based out of Connecticut. I think they have an office in Tampa, Florida. But they're solely remote based. So all of the administration for this company is remote. And like the people that interviewed me have been working with this company for at least a decade. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's see, because what I was a little bit worried about where it's like a 15-minute call for an offer. It's like, is that a scam? It sounds like this is.
No, that company is a really big company. I know my husband uses a lot for his work. Like they order some stuff from them. So they were both fairly big companies.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So Charles Ike wanted to ask, what kind of questions do you ask the company?
Let's see. I asked them what the day-to-day was for the role. I asked them about how their data was stored and what kind of databases they had.
Those are great questions.
I asked them.
I'm so proud of you. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Like I had a solid 10 minutes of questions for them.
Good.
I think I asked about like kind of how their day went. Like, is it I need to be in front of my computer all 8 hours, tied to my desk?
Yeah, like, are you on call or something?
Right. Or is it, get your work done, make it to your meetings, and everything's fine? Those kind of questions.
Yeah. So you're kind of asking about their culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important because you don't want to come off like, I don't care if it's, a coal mine. I want to be in there, It's
right,
like,
exactly.
It's like, I just need you don't want to come off as desperate. You want to come off as like a little bit, maybe not coy, but just like, I'm not desperate. I've got options.
Yeah. And the truth is, like, I need a job to fit into my life. I can't build my life around my job. I've already got, 3 kids with soccer and art and all that kind of stuff. I've got to be able to do those things too.
Gotcha. All right, Abby, we're coming into right about the hour mark.
Wow.
So just any last words? Like, are there any ideas or advice that's coming to mind for the listeners who are still tuned in?
Yeah. Katie's advice. If you have used those tools, you're an analyst. So put that on your LinkedIn. Don't put aspiring. Don't just list a bunch of tools that you know. Just say, I am a data analyst. So I think that mindset is really helpful.
And you literally are a data analyst starting on Monday.
I am.
So I'm so happy for you. And I want to know kind of how this goes. So maybe we'll have you on in 6 months to a year. It's like a follow-up.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe if it's a year, maybe you'll, have a promotion or something like that.
Yeah, I plan on fitting grad school in there somewhere. So.
Ooh, very nice. Yeah. All right. Well, Abby, thank you so much for being on. And thanks everybody in the chat for all your great questions. You guys have a good one.
Thanks for having me. Bye.